Hey everyone, welcome in. We apologize. We are so sorry for the delay. We had some
Uh,
technical difficulties. We tried everything in the book, Kingdom's Blue Snowball mic. It just went haywire. We were talking for
F's in
like
the
10
chat.
minutes and we were about to start the show and it just shut down. So I don't know what happened, but he's able to use his backup mic. And at least we get to talk today because a lot of stuff has been happening around the CDL. But before we get into that, Kingdom, welcome back. I think you missed the last episode or so. So
I
welcome back. How
did.
are you, man?
I'm doing good. I missed a couple. There's so much happening. I was, saying like I got my no pressure for anyone out there. I got my vaccination on Saturday and um I was down for the count, man. I actually like kind of was tired and lethargic and all that kind of stuff and I was like, "No, I don't care. I'm coming on the show because there is so much that has happened in Call of Duty, and I haven't been able to talk about any of it. Like watching all these changes, new teams forming, people playing with other people. I hear speculations, and then the next day they happen, and bam, decimates on a team, and Seattle doesn't have Looney, and then I've been watching as much content as I can and consuming as much as I can, but I'm glad I'm on the show with you because I know you're on the up and up with everything.
But we'll see. I mean, I'm right there with you. There's stuff that's happened. It seems like every couple hours, there's just random things happening in the CDL, people getting dropped, different roster moves being made. I mean, the scene is kind of all over the place, but that's what makes the scene so great. So,
Right.
as we get into the topics with this one, we feel like we have to start with the main storyline. If you guys didn't see it, which I'm sure you probably did, but Huke has been transferred to LA Thieves. Dallas put out a tweet earlier that said that they worked with Huke to put him on a team that he wanted to be on, and that was the LA Thieves. And before that, actually, it was like 10 or 15 minutes before that tweet actually went out, TJ said that he had been benched. And at that point in time, we didn't really have like any background information or what was going on. TJ just put out a tweet that he was benched, and I reacted to that tweet, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what the heck is going on? Like, how do you bench TJ? He's been playing really well as of late. If you're looking at that roster, I mean, he's the guy that's been making a ton of plays. Of course, Kenny's the mainstay on the LA Thieves roster, but you just don't expect to see something like that. And then you get to thinking, and well, how could this have possibly went down, or why might it have went down? And the biggest reason is obviously when you have a chance to pick up a guy like Huke, you take the opportunity and you jump at it. So Huke is over to the LA Thieves. Kingdom, what's your initial reaction, man?
Wow. I was listening to the flank and I heard I don't know if it was Ben or Zuma, somebody that was like 100 Thieves is like one of the only teams that can, make a move for him based on finances and all that kind of stuff. And having the appeal to someone like Hook. When this whole thing with Hook went down, I remembered a couple of moments that happened that made me think this was coming. And that's why, and I never tweeted it out, but I kind of called the change. I just said that it was possible. I said if Dallas makes a change, this was 2 episodes ago. I said if Dallas makes a change, it could only be because someone like Hook doesn't enjoy the playing environment. That's the only reason. Because Illy and Shotzi were not leaving Krim. They trust him. He brought them championships, a world championship. He ain't going. They're not going anywhere. They trust him and his leadership and his style, and they're down with it. Um, Something about Hook, when he had cried after a match, and then he mentioned something in an interview in one of the matches where they were asking him like, "How's things going?" And they had won, and he still was like, "Well, I have to play better and be in line with what everybody else is doing." And I was like, why is he saying that after a W? Like why is he mentioning? And then they won and he got benched. And so whatever the reason, whether it was environment, I am interested in the fact that Dallas decided to stick with the 30 something time champion winningest player and Shotzi and Illy rather than Hook, who was their franchise player, in my opinion. You know, I didn't think of Crimsix the same way I would think of Scump on Optic, where you would drop anybody else and it wouldn't be a big deal. Even if we were like, why would you drop Envoy? Like if they dropped Envoy and picked up Hook, we might all be like, that was kind of a 1-for-1. Like you didn't really. And Envoy's leadership ability is better than Hook's, so you kind of downgraded. But we don't expect them to drop Seth or anything like that. Like, he drops himself if he wants. And so I think the LA Thieves was a good landing spot for Huke, and I think he wants that environment. You know, I said on Twitter today when I responded to it. The moment TJ said he was dropped, I was like, okay, well, Huke's coming. You know, there's no other, because I had heard the rumor, and it wasn't a rumor, it was like a speculation. I'd heard the speculation. But the reality is Huke is now in an environment where there's joy. You know, I don't think, and I'm just going to say it, I don't think Huke could play for Slasher, and I'm saying for because Slasher is like a Crim Six. That's his team, you know, when he's on the roster. I don't know if Huke could survive in that environment. I think he wants to be on an environment where it's fun and free and he can fry. And what Dallas was trying to build was not that. We got Rambo in the background, who is one of the most strategic and play the game like it's supposed to be played players that we've ever had in Call of Duty history, and has always stuck to that. And we've heard other people that have played with Rambo mention the difficulty of playing with Rambo because he is so structured when it comes to how to play Call of Duty. And then you add in Crim, who is one of the most practiced and prepared players because of that same structure, you know. And so Huke wanted to play outside of that, in my opinion. This is totally speculation, but I think Huke wanted to play fast and free. And I honestly believe the LA Thieves, I said on paper, but I mean on the sticks, right now, today, in my opinion, with this change, are a top 3 team. And I'm just saying on the sticks, not on paper, but on paper they're great as well. If they would have traded Huke for Venom, there's some mixed changes they could have made that would have made them top 3 on paper. But I think the way they're playing right now, if he just slides in and just adds some more consistency in the slaying department. But I always thought TJ had that clutch ability in Surge. I mean, there's going to be some things that I think are missing. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm interested to see how they play. I mean, they go up against FaZe for their next match or something like that. Like, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Or no, I think Seattle plays FaZe.
Seattle does play FaZe. LA Thieves plays New York, which will also be a really good matchup. So there are some burners this weekend. We'll get to them for sure. Down in the chat, look at our producer Shannon coming through with some of the comments in the chat. Man, I love it. But Keanu's Fool was like, I was like, no way they dropped TJ. There's nobody else who can fill that slot that's free right now. And forgot Huke was even an option. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton to unpack here. I'll go back to just kind of the first thing that Kingdom said was 2 podcasts ago. Ashley, it was like just towards the end of the podcast, and Ashley's not feeling well. Ashley, I wish you were here because I would love to have your take on all of these roster moves and all the stuff we're going to talk about. But Ashley just posed the question to us. Would any of the top 3 teams, would they make a roster move? And at that point in time, it was Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago. We went through their rosters and we were like, there's no way that Optic is dropping Scump. There's no way that anybody from that Atlanta squad, Simp, Abizi, Celium, there's no way any of those guys are getting dropped. And the only one that Kingdom was the only one that said, you know, like potentially somebody from Dallas could end up getting dropped. It didn't even come. I didn't even think it was an option that Dallas would move forward and drop like their best player. I mean, Huke through the first stage and a half was the MVP basically of the league this year. So to see him go, then to see where he wound up, I do think it's a good place for him, but I do feel bad for TJ just because as of late, every time that we've seen LA Thieves play, like in between maps, it just looks like they're having a great time. Looks like they're vibing, they're laughing, they're joking it up in between rounds, like even in between rounds where it's stressful situations in Search and Destroy, you see them like looking over and laughing with each other and like joking around. And I think that they had something going there with that roster. I think there's no doubt that they get better, not because TJ was playing terribly. I think TJ was the best SMG on that roster. I think he was playing great. But we'll see how it ends up working out overall. But if I go back 3-4 months ago and I think about where Dallas was and where they're at now, I feel like we have to take a look at both these squads because it really does feel like one team is trending in a negative direction in Dallas, especially with barely getting a victory over LAG in the last week. And then you look at LA Thieves, and it just seems like they're slowly but surely building momentum. I remember I put out a power rankings video. It was like the day or two after they dropped Slasher, and I didn't drop them very far. I think I dropped them to like 7 or 8 in my power rankings at that point in time. And the comments were like, you got to move LA Thieves down to like 11 or 12. Why would they make that move? They are in a free fall. And everybody was just kind of all over LA Thieves. And then slowly but surely, they start to gain momentum. Kenny looked really good at that main AR position. Draza came in. He's been their second best player stat-wise since they went ahead and they made that move. And now Huke is there. And it just seems like they were at a point in time where this was not going well. And they're just
Yeah.
slowly but surely building. You look at these two squads, which team do you think is better right now? If you look at Dallas and where they're at, LA Thieves, where they're at, if you had to take one, who are you taking? Who are you saying is the better squad as a result of these roster moves?
Okay, so I mean, I'm kind of a little bit of a Dallas fanboy or something. I just have this weird delusional confidence in Dallas. I mean, they're 2-1. They're sitting second in Group A. They're probably going winners bracket again. They probably will all year. And honestly, if they can still eke out wins like they always have been able to, I don't know what the heck it is about that team. I don't know if it's because they play so fundamental that if somebody's going to win, because they play so regimented, they're going to do it and they're going to ice out. I don't know what the heck the deal is with Dallas where they just eke out these wins. It's definitely a huge risk seeing in the chat, but at the same time, they did the right thing by Huke. This is what Hastro kind of does, like when he gave Scumpy back to Hector, like that was crazy, that was, I mean, that's a career-changing move, a team-changing move. And you're like, okay, Scump, come on, sign a contract. You're with us. You know what, Hector, you want him back. He made a mistake. All is forgiven. And I'm sure there was some money exchanged. How much did it cost for Huke to go to LA Thieves? We will not know. I heard rumors of a minimum of $500,000 and all this kind of stuff. But which team is better? Right now, like this is on the sticks thing. It looks like LA Thieves. They're top in their group. They may stay in that position. I don't know if they beat New York, they're gonna stay in number one. They'll be 4-1. The only team that can catch them is Optic Chicago, but they haven't played FaZe yet, I don't believe. So good luck to Chicago. Dallas is in a group where they're kind of in a good spot right now at 2-1, and a lot of people 1-2 and a 1-3, and so we'll see how that turns out. Dallas, in my opinion, only needs to get one more win, and then they're back in the winners bracket. And so I think these teams are going to be fairly close. It's hard for me to say that Dallas is the worst team if they played each other right now. Jeez. Honeymoon phase, Huke going against his old team. I guess I'd still say Dallas. It's weird. I'd say 3-2 Dallas. I'm a weirdo. I pick them 3-2 in almost every series because that's how they win. They have so many more maps than any other team, because they're ridiculous and they just but they figure out how to get wins. Nate got the stimmy check. So I'd say right now, I personally would pick Dallas 3-2 over the Los Angeles Thieves. And here's the reason. Kenny's the only player still on that team, right, from day one on the LA Thieves. Everyone else has been traded or dropped or sitting on the bench.
But Draza's been filthy.
He's been great. I mean, and they've pulled in the right players. Are they gonna ice up in the moment? I don't know if this is just honeymoon, because with Huke wanting to play free and loose, someone in the moment has to make those decisions and tell them what to do and provide some direction. I feel like, I mean, I don't know, you could probably speak to this, Icon, but I would think TJ sometimes would be a play caller in search. I mean, I don't know who that slides to on that team now. You got a bunch of guys that are good in their individual positions. Like, who's going to kind of tell them what to do in the search game? But, you look at Toronto and they're 4-0 and they're frying and they've won so much and they're not the best, I guess, in hardpoint, but in control and search, they've only lost one map in the last, I don't know how many series, 8 or something crazy. And so I think Dallas is still Dallas, in my opinion. They didn't change. And this is weird to say. Dallas dropped Huke and is still Dallas. And that's awkward. What other team could lose Huke and be the same team? the next day. Like, and still, because I know in your mind, Icon, you'd never have believed much in Dallas.
I
you have,
did until I started seeing otherwise.
yeah, and rightfully so, right? They were getting too close. They're the opposite of Seattle. Seattle gets as close as Dallas and loses, except for these last three series. They've been all bad. But yeah, I'd say right now 3-2 Dallas. I mean, I'm kind of interested. I'm 90% positive you would say the LA Thieves are the better team. But who are the LA Thieves not better than in the league with
Yeah,
this change?
just coming in with this comment down here in the bottom this that Kiana says, I imagine Huke could be the new shot caller. I do think that Huke is a really cerebral player. I think that he's always taking in what's going around the map. I think he's always making the right play. He's always positioning himself in the right spot. So I think that if you look at those individual personalities, we know just kind of how to go with the flow Kenny can be. I think Huke brings a ton to that squad. And there was a comment earlier from Tanush in the chat that said, imagine Fellow doesn't work out. Like, just imagine that they brought him in. He was that piece that, okay, we're going to have you come in, run the flex. We're going to have you fill in for Huke. And they did have to move Illy at that point in time also. But if he doesn't work out, then what do they do? I mean, that would be a massive hole. So far,
Vivid?
looks
I don't
like
know.
he's been playing okay. I mean, Fellow has he had a 1.03 overall in that match against LAG. But the one thing that I do want to mention, because I don't want to be down on Dallas kind of all over the place, is that it seems like we've been waiting, or at least I've been waiting through over 2 stages here for Shotzzy to show up. Like, where is the Shotzzy from last year? He just hasn't been that same player. And if you
Right.
go through and you look at some of his individual stats, like I think he's negative overall for the season in hardpoint, and his S&D first bloods are down. He really hasn't been playing great, but he almost willed Dallas to win in that matchup against LAG. So I don't know if he just kind of takes more on his shoulders and says, okay, the guy that's probably been the best player in the league outside of maybe Simp and a couple others, he's no longer here, so I have to do a little bit more. We'll see what happens. It could catapult him into a good spot. We'll end up seeing where he goes. But I will disagree with you. I think if Dallas and LA Thieves play right now, I think Kenny looks like he's a top 3 main AR right now. He's playing so freely, and he's making all the right decisions around the map. Draza has been unbelievably impressive in that victory over Optic that they had. So that 3-1 victory towards the end of last week, they were carried by Kenny and Draza. And it was actually TJ and Venom that really didn't play well in that matchup. And it was still lights out. Like, nobody was really close. Everybody from Optic basically had an off match there, but it was Kenny and Draza that kind of catapulted them and willed them through that match. So we'll see what happens. I just think right now, with how well Kenny and Draza are playing, you add somebody like Huke, even though Venom hasn't, jumped off the stat sheet or anything, he's still a really good, really fast player.
What do you think
But
about that trade, though? Not trading Venom and trading TJ. Like, it's some of these trades, I'm really like. I mean, I'll be honest, and we should do a show about it at some point. The trades this year have been bananas, like absolutely groundbreaking, career changing. And I look at COD and I'm like, man, how do you survive as a pro player? Like, these guys are now being edged out all at once. Like, there's a whole group of them that are just like, all
it's
right, your time
crazy.
is done. Slacked, peace out. Looney, be gone. Methods, I'm sorry, bro. Have a good time. Like, people are literally being edged out of COD that have been in for a hot minute and have proven pedigree within our esport. It would be like if, let's say, Russell Westbrook had a bad season, which that's not really possible, but let's say he did, and they didn't just bench him and not start him anymore. They were like, you're out of the NBA, have fun, like, go to the D League. Like, it's this esport is so interesting to me, and it's hard because everybody breaks down everybody's gameplay. Everybody's a commentator. Everybody knows what's best and what rotation you should have ran. And, the reason Looney was dropped because of this, and this. And I look at this Thieves team and I'm like, okay, why drop TJ instead of Venom? And I know I'm
Yeah.
just an outsider looking in, but they're getting rid of the original team. Like they're like, no, we're not just going to break up the trio. We're only keeping Kenny. Everybody else, deuces.
Yeah,
Like,
I like what Clown said in the chat when he said, I feel like people have been hating on Venom too much. Seems like every time they show him on screen, he is making 2 or 3 pieces and really impactful plays. I do think that he might have been the better IGL. I don't think you get too much of
that's a
that
good,
from
yeah,
TJ.
yeah,
I think that he is an unbelievably skilled player, but he doesn't seem to be super vocal. And he's also not that really entry focused type of SMG. So he's not going to be
yeah.
getting a ton of first bloods the way that you see a BZ and some of the other really fast SMGs. Asim has been doing that a lot this year. So I think that they had a decision to make, and I think that they took the IGL and how well Venom's been playing and just the type of overall role that he plays and thought, okay, we'll see what happens here,
Well,
and we'll move on from there.
I guess we also didn't think about the fact that it's probably a lot cheaper when you're picking up Huke to drop TJ than Venom.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a little business involved in this stuff. And so I would guess the salary cap went way through the roof when picking up Huke. And it was like, keep TJ, a premier player we're probably paying a premium price for, or Venom, who we picked up, from the league, from challengers, and then drop TJ, put him on the bench, and maybe there's a lower salary with that. I don't know how that works, but maybe they're putting TJ in a position as well where he can actually go to another team. If they drop Venom, he'd go back to challengers, and so yeah, I know we got another trade to talk about, but I'm interested in how this works out, man. This league has changed so much this year. I'm having a hard time keeping track of rosters. I mean, just to be blatantly honest, it's like me and you last show or 2 shows ago when we were on together, we were talking about a roster that Ashley asked us, and then the chat was like, "Oh no, actually,
it was New
Mac
York
that they kept. They dropped Diamond Con," and I'm like, "Oh,
yep."
Well, guess I read the wrong tweet.
Yeah, I do. I like the point that you made that it seems like last year every franchise was too late to make a move. Like they hung on for too long. They were too far down in the standings. They just couldn't dig themselves out of the basement. And this year, it's like the exact opposite. Like you look up and down the board, there's everybody except for like 2 or 3 teams has made a roster move. And one of those ones that held on last year for too long and we're holding on, essentially, a lot of people would say too long this year was Seattle. And it seemed like every time you watched a Seattle match, if they would have just gotten a little bit more production from the SMG position, even with the increase in production that Pristini brought the second half or the second stage overall, they would have been in a much better place. They would have had many more victories. And finally, they announced today that Looney is going to the bench and they are bringing in Decimate. And I think that this is a move that's welcomed. I think Decimate was really one of the only SMG, like elite SMG players left in the challenger scene. I think that they probably sat on their hands a little bit too long for the Venoms and the Standees and the young guns that have just been tearing up the challenger scene. So they're bringing in Decimate to team him as a new duo with Pristini. And as I look at this one, I'll tell you, I look across the matches this weekend, and there are some squads that made some roster moves. And we're going to see like right away if this is working out for them or not. But just kind of an overall reaction, Decimate in, Looney out. How do you feel about it overall?
I feel good. I watched an Octane video where he was just very transparent and said they went after Vivid and it just didn't work with LAG. They wouldn't release him he didn't share all the details, but he was just like, hey, just to be honest, we tried to get Vivid, and that would have been a great pickup for their team. I think Decimate, along with, I know there's a number of other top SMGs still hanging out in challengers that probably could compete in this league. There's only 2 teams, like you mentioned, that haven't made a change, Optic Chicago and Atlanta FaZe. And they're chilling and hanging out, I guess, towards the top of the board. So FaZe probably not changing. Optic Chicago, everybody's talked about it because they're in that weird position where they could be 7th tomorrow. Like, honestly, with the number, not tomorrow because they're 20 points ahead, but they could be behind New York, and then after the major, they could easily be behind the ROKKR and the Thieves. And so they're in an interesting position. Toronto's not going anywhere. I think everybody has learned that, and so with this first impression on the trade that Seattle made, I think it was necessary. Octane was talking about how a lot of people have been misjudging Looney on Reddit, and Octane talked about how much he gave to his career and how meaningful Looney was to making him a better player. And I think that's the piece that people miss about someone like Looney, where he, in an all-around roundabout way, he's a good IGL, but he also has great game knowledge. I know he mentioned on Twitter that if Seattle was interested, he'd help them as a coach because, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't think there's a destination for Looney outside of this opportunity. I don't see a team in the league with the way that people are doing trades. I mean, how many Challengers players have we seen come into this league this year? Like, they're not going to get Looney if they could get, Sib or Saints or one of these other guys that's out there, and with this new weird meta that the LA Thieves are giving to us, which I was going to mention it when you were mentioning them, where rather than a main AR and a flex, it's two ARs, and it's just like Kenny can do whatever the heck they need him to do. He technically can be a flex. He gets to him and Draza being able to be free with two ARs is dangerous to any team, and I don't think anybody knows how to defend against that yet. So they might get some more W's before everybody adjusts like they did to FaZe, and now FaZe is a beatable team. They are not the unbeatable goats that they once were. They're more around where Optic is or where Dallas was, where they were good and everybody said they were good and that they were great, but they were beatable, on the right day. And Optic has proven they're beatable on the right day. Now FaZe has proven that, that they're beatable on the right day. The only team right now that's looking indestructible is the Toronto Ultra right now. And so Seattle needs to turn it around. They are 11th, I believe, in standings. And yes, they have a chance, but they have to finish well. They're already going to the losers bracket in the third major, they know that, and so they're preparing for a run. And hopefully the honeymoon stage works out for them. Hopefully Desi does a good job on the team. I'm sure he will. I think the challenge with that team, with any team that Octane has been on for the last few years, in my opinion, ever since he traded to Optic and tried that, however many years ago, any team that he's been on, it can't be that Octane slays out. There's something missing, I'll just say. And I don't know if he needs to step up and be a leader like Arcides is, or if he needs to be like he's being the kind of the content creator guy that leads the role there, like some of the other teams have, like someone like Formal who's funny and silly and also can shoot straight, but I think there's something missing with these teams that Octane has been on, because he is very talented, but he's also partnering up with talented players and they're just still struggling to find success. Hopefully Decimate brings in whatever it is needed. It's just like what happened with Standy on the Røkkr. Like all of a sudden everything just fit. It just worked better. And it was like you didn't need to change too much. One role, one player, and everything just kind of flowed. And I really hope that that's what happens for Seattle. I would love to see like Octane win 3 matches in a row, just for morale, and for the hype and the fun of it, and getting to tweet "good run." Like I would just love to see that. He is that good of a player. And otherwise, in my personal opinion, I don't know how long his contract is, but it's kind of like when Kevin Durant went to the Warriors. Like, I think next year would be the year for Octane to slide himself onto one of these top teams, like a Dallas if Krim retires or something, or onto an Optic, or onto one of these squads where he knows he's going to not just get attention, but he's going to win based on the organization and the coaches and all that. So.
Yeah, interesting takes there for Octane. I do think that when this year started, every time I would watch Seattle play, I was waiting for him to put up those same type of numbers that he put up last year. And they weren't coming, right? He wasn't being the same player, the same dominant player that he was last year. But as of late, Seattle's turned things around a little bit. I know that it's not necessarily showing up when it comes to wins and losses, but they are far more competitive than they were before. Even the 0-3 loss that they just had to New York, the map 1 was like a 10-point game or something like that. I mean, they've been super close in and out of all of these. Octane has been playing well. Pristini's been changing things around. Gunless has really played well all year outside of a match or two. So I think that this could make them pretty dangerous. I don't know how it'll end up working out for this stage, because if you look, they're 0-3. They still have to play Atlanta this weekend, and they have to play London. So potentially, I mean, I think we would both, I'm sure that we'll get the predictions. I don't think that they're going to beat Atlanta, but that could be an interesting matchup against London, as London has also been looking better as of late. But one of the teams that you mentioned that has kind of shown themselves as of late to be a team that's beatable is Optic. And it's kind of surprising because it seems like one match they're in, they look like they cannot be beaten. They look like they're one of the best teams in the league overall. And then they come out in a really big matchup against LA Thieves and they just get slaughtered. It just didn't go well. It didn't look great for them at all. I will say I like the fact that they were kind of taking some chances on different guns. Like you saw Dashy use the FFAR, and Dashy slayed out. Envoy tried the Milano, didn't really look all that great.
You got to win
for
if you
him.
try that stuff, in my opinion. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get that take too. Like if you're playing in scrims and you're absolutely shredding, which they might be, they haven't streamed their scrims for like close to 2 months or something now. So maybe this is something that's normal for them or something that they've really been stressing for the last week or so. But it is also telling that you haven't seen anybody else use the FFAR. You haven't seen anybody else use the Milano on certain maps. But that's kind of what Envoy does too. Of course, if you go back to last year, he was one of the first ones to kind of switch up whatever gun he was using too. So I look at Optic overall, and they're just a squad that is standing up there still in the points, right? They're in fourth. They're tied for fourth. They're only 5 points away from being in third, but they're only 20 points away from really sliding down the standings also. So you look at Optic, and it seems like one match, they're one of the best squads in the game. And you look at a different one, and they just aren't really showing up, like in their most recent matchup against LA Thieves. As you've watched them, have you noticed anything that kind of seems to be going wrong for them, or anything
with
that's
Optic?
just not really settled in? Yeah, with Optic.
No, I mean, I'll be blatantly honest with you. I think they're the team that they've always been. I think you give them the thing with Optic is it's an any given Sunday thing with that team right now. And there were a couple years where it was on any given Sunday they probably were winning. These days it's like on any given Sunday they are picked to win, because they have the confidence, they have the pedigree. When we go back to LAN, of course they're going to have an advantage. I just think the challenge is consistency with that team, and again, like you said, they're in fourth, the lowest they can go. They can be in seventh literally next week or 2 weeks from now after the major. It is easily possible because the LA Thieves just got Huke. My guess is they're going to rise up the ranks. The subliners, if they can get it together and be consistent, they're going to finish well, which they have done at each major. The LA Thieves have sneakily finished well at the majors, and that's why they're in sixth place, and they've been able to stay there even when they have these bad losing streaks sometimes outside of the major. And the Minnesota ROKKR are poised to make a run as well and to place higher. And who knows what's going to happen with these lower teams that are now making lots of changes. And so I think Optic needs to keep gunning for it and going for it. They're that team that, like the Atlanta FaZe, it's like, why, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'd say I haven't seen anything where I'm like, now seeing the FAR and the Milano come out, I was like, okay, I hope you guys win if you're going to be clowning like this. Like, I just hope if you're pulling out a gun that we haven't seen yet, you're going to do well. Now, I will say Dashy looked good with the FAR. He looked more comfortable than he does like with a Krieg, but you got to catch a W. So if you're not going to convince everybody else to play with that same gun, then you got to go to what everybody else is using, because it's 2 shots to the head with the Krieg. Like, you might as well have that in your hands, But Dashy's not that type of an AR. So it's an interesting mix between Dashy and Formal and how they partner up, and then you have Scump and Envoy. I think they play together really well, as good as any of the 2 SMGs in the league, in my opinion. And that's why Optic can beat you on any given Sunday. Is Optic going to go on a run like Toronto? Is Optic going to go on a run like the Atlanta FaZe? Is Optic going to consistently place top 3 like the Dallas Empire? I hope that they place top 3 for the first time this year in this stage. And if they don't, it's weird to say, but look what we've seen this year. There is 2 teams that haven't made changes. If Optic does not place top 3 again, they placed what, 5th and then like 4th or 6th, 5th, 6th, and then 5th. Like, I think honestly, that is not the pedigree of their team. Yes, Hector always talks about it. We know how to lose. We've lost so many times over the last 10 years. You know, this is a part of our, you know, we're focused on, you know, the future and the long term, and we want to keep this team together. But we thought that we didn't see Optic making the trades they did last year. So I honestly think that if they do not place top 3 in this upcoming tournament and they land 6th or 7th, where they're close to that 8th position, and let's say 8th now, instead of being 80 points, is like 100 or more, I think Optic will make a change. Not because something's wrong, but because something's not right. You know, it's weird. That's what teams are doing these days. And I hear people saying this thing about, well, you don't really want to win if you don't make a change. You know, Seattle, you don't really want to win if you don't pick somebody up. You don't really want to win if you don't go after Vivid. If you don't go after Huke, you don't really want to win. And it's like, okay, come on now. There's 48 players in this league. They all want to win a lot. There is nobody in this league that's like, I'm just so happy to be here and I just want to get on the sticks and play my game. They all want to win. And nobody wants to win more than the Ginger Ninja. Like, nobody wants to win more than Scumpy. And so I just think they're giving it their all. They're giving it their best. They're keeping on the grind. They've stopped doing content still. They're still on this content break that they've been on in this streaming break. And they're focused on winning, playing these best of 11s, all this kind of stuff. I hope for the best, because I think when the green wall is at the top of our league, we all win. You know, not number 1, but when they're consistently placing high, staying in tournaments longer, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So I hope they pick it up. The 3 teams above them in standings are 3 of the teams that are, in my opinion, consistently better than them right now. And that's, you know, FaZe, Dallas, and Toronto. Can Dallas not be better than Optic, and can Optic kind of take that position and be second? Sure. Or third? Sure. But they have to be consistent.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting point when you look at, like, this could really be a turning point here for Optic, because if you look at, like, even this stage, who they have left, they still have to play New York and they still have to play Atlanta. And if you look at those group stages overall, Optic's 2-1, Atlanta's 2-1, New York is 2-1, and LA Thieves basically already has that first seed already ranked or already locked up. Even if they lose, they're still probably going to end up being in the winner's bracket. So you look there, like, they have 2 of their toughest matchups this upcoming weekend. And if things don't go well for them, it's mind-boggling to think that they can make a move. But also, and I thought this was pretty revealing, there was a video that LA Thieves put out where they kind of ranked their opponents and where they were and stuff like that. And the one thing that they mentioned that really kind of caught my mind and stood out to me is that when they were talking about Optic, of course, it said they're a great team. But they did mention, as long as you can just cut down on Envoy's shenanigans, you know he's going to be flanking you. You know he's going to be in some weird spot trying to open up a flank or open up a push. If you can just cut down on the stuff that he's trying to do around the map, they play pretty straight up. And I thought that was pretty telling, because, you know, it's one of those top teams. I think most people would consider LA Thieves a top team right now that's talking about their opponents. And when you look at Chicago, they're saying, if just lock down what Envoy's trying to do around the map, and you should be able to play them pretty straight up, outslay them, and you get a victory against them. So that's what they said, and they came out and they backed it up in that 3-1 victory against them. So it'll be a nice storyline coming into this weekend, what happens in those 2 pretty high-profile matchups there for Optic Chicago. But very similarly, as Optic is a team that when they play well, it's great. When they don't play well, it's one of those things that you can't really put your thumb on. There was Tanush in the chat said, I know we are talking about rosters right now, but at some point could we cover the ROKKR? Because the team seems off and for some reason they can't just put their finger on it. And it's the same way. I feel like, okay, I watch Optic and they look great one map, and they get a victory against some really good teams, and then they come out and they get smoked by LA Thieves, and you're like, wait, like what happened? And it's the same thing with Minnesota, kind of. I won't say to that extent.
No, it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. They have been looking far better since they made the roster move, but I got a very similar feel in that very first matchup of season 3, week 1, in that matchup against Florida, where they came out, they got absolutely demolished by Skies and Awakening. And by the time it was over, you're like, wait, what just happened? Like the hard points, they lost by like over 100 points in both those hard points. And then they come out and they take care of business against Paris. And I know you've heard me say it a billion times, you got to beat the teams that are supposed to be underneath you, that you have to beat.
Absolutely.
And they came out and they took care of business against Paris. And you're like, okay, well, this squad is back. Now, I will say, in that matchup against Toronto, the last one that we saw last week, they came out, they took that map 1 against Toronto. That was actually the first map that Toronto had lost in their last 12 maps. They entered that matchup 12-0 in their last 12 maps. So they have been absolutely frying.
So now they're 15-1.
Yeah, exactly. But even in that control, that garrison control, by the way, I like the fact that Minnesota said, you know what, we're going to play garrison control, even though we're really good at raid control. They're really good too, and we think that we can win on garrison control. I like the fact that they made that move, and it was really close. They 1,000% through that garrison control. They won the first 2 rounds, and then to lose that map, they lost the last 2 defenses, and I was kind of shocked. We were doing the co-stream, and at that point I didn't even really know what to say, because they looked so good in the first 2 rounds. They only needed 1 more, and you lose an offense, fine. You're still up 2-1, but you slayed out so hard in the first 2 rounds that you had back-to-back defenses. And give Toronto credit. I mean, it's what they do, right? I mean, they've just been clutching up. They've just been going in as of late. But like, I believe it was Standy that said, if we just could have got to that map 5, I believe it would have been a Miami SND. I'm pretty positive. If you get to a Miami SND, who knows what happens, especially with how well Minnesota's been playing in that Miami SND.
They can go toe-to-toe with Toronto, in search. Yeah,
absolutely. But when I look overall at Minnesota, it just seems like I was really mind-boggled in that Florida matchup. I expected them to come out and play better and win that one, and they just didn't show up for that match. But every match after that, they seem like, they're a squad that's continuously getting better. They're beating teams that they should beat. They're putting up really close fights against a team like Toronto that's just they're just smacking everybody. So when you look at Minnesota, what's your pulse of the ROKKR and where they're currently at?
I mean, they're still to be honest, they're still kind of hanging around in top 6, but they should be top 4. There's wheels that need to turn. There's something that needs to activate. There's this. You got to beat the teams you need to beat. Like, you've said this. You say this a lot,
billion times,
and it's true. And there's a few teams in this league that have to. New York, Minnesota ROKKR have to take advantage of this whole thing. Chicago, you got to beat the teams that you got to beat. If you're losing to any teams below Toronto, Dallas, FaZe, and maybe even we could throw the LA Thieves up there now, any of the other teams in the league, the Minnesota and Chicago and New York should probably beat those other teams 80% of the time. And I'm talking about Florida, the Gorillas, the Legion, the Ravens, the Surge. Like, they should beat those teams, and it should be very consistent. The challenge is, though, is that they get these random losses in group play against teams that they shouldn't lose to. My expectation immediately in this group is Toronto and Dallas are the big threats. If Minnesota can only drop those 2 L's, they could be good.
Should be in good shape.
They could be 3-2, still go into the winner's bracket and be good. But when you lose to these other teams, it's unfortunate because you're sitting at 1-2 with Florida, with the Gorillas. So now there's unpredictability in the air, and we must win type of stuff. And Nobody wants to start in the losers bracket right now. No, you're missing out on so many points by starting in the losers bracket. Like you have to get so many more wins to get the same amount of points as somebody who needs like 2 wins in the winners bracket. And so it is important. We're on the champs run. This is the third stage, the third major. Minnesota, just like so many other teams in this league, is poised to make. They have the ice. I've seen the plays I see out of this team, the way they play together, seeing Attach play consistently, even in losses. Like that guy has just been on point all year long. Dylan has just played his game and played for the team, in my opinion, all year long. No matter the roster, no matter what roles everybody else changes, he does his thing. He stays in he plays his role very well. He's one of these pros that's at that level that's like, you would never want to replace me. I do my job. And he does. He goes out and he gets his job. If it's like, hey, get 10 rebounds and 10 assists, Attach is like, got it.
Yeah,
Like
you're right.
he does his job. And that's a good thing for this team. I think Standy, in my opinion, and he gets on show. I see him on the flank sometimes talking about, yeah, I trolled that. When you're new in the league, like, dude, stay the Standy that came out and beat Optic. Stay that Standy that came out and beat Dallas. Like, stay that Standy that made the right play, that did what you were told. Like, haven't been in the league long enough to have I trolled as a response to a wrong play. Like a mistake, cool. We all make mistakes. But trolling, I wouldn't. If I'm in Standy's shoes, I'm not even talking about trolling right now. I'm like, no, I'm focused on the goal. And of course he is. I'm not saying anything bad about Standy. I love the guy. And I think the Minnesota ROKKR should be top 4 in this league. I felt like they should have been last year, and they were in the beginning. They were in the beginning of this year as well. Dylan is the epitome of consistent. Love to hear it. Like that is, I can 100% agree with that. There's some players in this league that all year long, they've just been like, and like even Clayster's had a few off series, like, and some of these other consistent guys, but Dylan has just been really good. Like he's been a really good player. When his team loses, it's rarely because I'm like, he made a bad play, he did the wrong thing, he wasn't playing well, he wasn't doing. It's normally a team thing that causes them to lose, or someone else's mistake, or a bad rotation, or a bad call out, or 0.1 seconds in the control. Like. Or a nade hits him in the back of the head. Like it's like, honestly, there's been some unfortunate losses for the ROKKR, but you can't count. In my opinion, this is a professional sport. You can't blame those for the position that they're in the league right now. They're in a good position, and if you're a ROKKR fan and you're looking at the standings right now, and your team is in 7th, 30 points ahead, and you have some of these other teams making changes and trying to catch up, the ROKKR need to follow along with the Thieves and not let the Thieves run it up. No pun intended. They can't let New York and Optic Chicago and because Toronto, I don't know if you've noticed, they just ran up the leaderboard over the
They're
last 3-4
filthy.
weeks. They're just like, oh no, we're 3rd now, and most of you are going to call us the first best team. So good luck to the rest of the competition. Like these guys are 14-9. They're frying. They're doing their thing. 54 wins. Like that's bananas. They've only had 3 less map wins than Atlanta FaZe. Like Toronto is going absolutely crazy right now, and they're 3-0 teams, 3-1 teams, and they just look better. And I want to see that from the ROKKR for a good stage, like an entire stage. I just want to, like, stage 4, like, just get the W. But I think here in stage 3, I'm not saying Minnesota can't win a major. They can, but they got to beat teams like Toronto. They're going to have to go through a Dallas, a Chicago, a New York, the LA Thieves, all these teams above them in the standings. They got to go through them, and they can. And I hope they do. I think the team is fine. I don't think there should be any changes. I don't. I can't say what they need to change about their gameplay. There's just something that is preventing them from solidifying some of those victories that they should be getting, like you talked about. And they got to steal some from the bigger teams. They have to. These smaller, like the LA Thieves, what they did to Optic, you got to get those kind of wins. Like, and not just when Standy comes in his honeymoon, like right now. Like, get a win over like Atlanta FaZe. Get a win over who else is in their group right now? Yeah, get wins over Dallas and Toronto, and like it. I want to see I want to see the ROKKR pull some more upsets out that people don't expect and continue to be who they are, and they're very capable of it.
Yeah, one thing in the chat, Clown said, yeah, but I feel like they're just making a lot more mistakes than they used to. I do agree with that at times, but I think that there's a pretty big learning curve here ahead of Standy. I mean, the kid is 19. He just came out of Challengers. This game is way different than the one that he was playing before. And I think that he just has to change his game very slightly, but it's a slippery slope because part of what makes him so good and what has made such a difference in Hardpoint is that he is so aggressive. He is fearless. He enters gun battles just knowing that he's going to win. Like, he doesn't back down from anybody. And he showed that in the very first match against Optic that he came in after they made that roster move. But some of those same plays, I see them every once in a while being made in Search and Destroy, and it kind of ends up him just almost throwing his life away. So when you're looking at like the difference, what Minnesota has done prior to the roster move and after, prior to it, they were pretty successful in S&D. They were not good in Hardpoint at all. After the roster move, now Standy has come in. He's making those plays. He's putting the pressure on. He's pushing the enemies I mean, every time he gets the opportunity, he's pushing towards somebody and really applying a ton of pressure. I think that there's just going to be a slight learning curve with when to do that in other game modes and when your life might be a little bit more important. And I trust that they'll get it figured out. I'm sure that they're working on this stuff all the time, but I have no quarrels whatsoever with Minnesota. I think that they've done a fantastic job. And I think as they move on, they'll just get better and better. But one other thing that I'll say is this is a super important weekend for them. I know that we've showed the standings a couple times, but they have a match against LAG, which they should win, even though LAG just played a really tight match against Dallas, which we can't really use that as a barometer because we're not sure where Dallas is at right now with their roster change. Right. But their very first matchup on Thursday, they have to win that matchup against LAG. That'll get them to 2-2. And then they actually have the marquee matchup on Sunday. It is the last matchup of the Dallas home series.
Of course, it's with Dallas.
Against Dallas.
That is so... The ROKKR and Dallas seem to always just have these weird collisions like that matter so much.
Yeah, this weekend overall is just absolutely massive. And it's massive for Florida too. You look at their matchups, they also have to play Dallas. And it's kind of odd that they're basically the team that Minnesota is jockeying back and forth with. They also play LAG. So it's almost like which team is going to do better against Dallas and LAG. That's the team that's probably going to end up being the other team that makes it into the winner's bracket. So it's a really important weekend this weekend. I'm actually just as intrigued by what's happening over in Group A with what's happening over in Group B with so many teams at 2-1. But I think we've come to that point where we got to get some predictions in.
All right.
So we'll get started here on Thursday with that matchup that we were just talking about. We have Minnesota versus LAG. Who you taking? Why you taking them? What's the map count?
3-1 ROKKR. I just think they're a better team. They're poised. They need the W. They're going to come out swinging. They're going to be ready. They're going to be on their game. Long break until that next game. So, I mean, good luck on their practice, but at least they get to watch Dallas play with their new roster again. So they'll have 3 reps of watching them with fellow. But, Minnesota ROKKR 3-1.
I like that pick. I do think that Minnesota's in a better spot right now than LAG. I think LAG can be sneaky at times just because you never quite know what you're going to get, especially after the roster change. I think Chino's been playing really well. He put up decent numbers against Dallas. And actually in that matchup, everybody played really well outside of Apathy. And he didn't even play terrible. But Silly 1.07, Assault 1.04, Chino 1.04. They all just played really solid and really consistent against Dallas. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as what some may think, just because I think LAG is vibing. I think they're playing much better. Yeah. Chino brings a lot to that squad. I'm going to say it's going to go to a map 5. I think Minnesota's going to win in 5. I think they'll clutch up in the S&D. They'll win 3-2, which brings us to another unbelievably important matchup between Yeah, I mean, there's so many this weekend. That's what I love about week threes of a stage is that right now, like the records are out there. Optic is 2-1, New York's 2-1. I would say it's pretty safe to say that if you win this matchup, you're probably going to be in the winner's bracket. I mean, sure, crazy things can happen, but the winner of this is putting themselves in a really good position at 3-1 in the group overall. So, Chicago, New York, who are you taking?
It's weird because I'm. Oh, okay, I see. Um, this is a must-win for both teams. This is hard because Chicago goes up against FaZe and New York goes up against the Thieves. Like, I this is gonna be a banger. Goodness, Optic's got to win this, man. I picked the Thieves to beat Optic, and I was right. In the last match, there's something missing from Optic Chicago, and I don't know what it is. They're a little off, and when they feel off, they play off. I don't know how they work like that, but it's just true. Like when that team feels off, they play off. Um, but New York are beatable because of the trade, and there's some moments where you could take advantage of the newness of their team. 3-2. 3-2 Optic on Moscow. They will not line up on the bomb site.
So, stick with me here for a moment, but I've
Okay.
just been kind of doing a little research back and forth, and I've been pretty intrigued by what Hydra's been doing for New York. And this is crazy. So, since Hydra joined, I took both their SMGs. So, I took Hydra and Asim. I took their KDs, like their kills per 10 minutes, their hardpoint engagements per 10 minutes, all the way down the board. And in hardpoint, those two, since Hydra joined, have the number one hardpoint KD as an SMG duo and number one kills per 10 minutes in hardpoint as an SMG duo. They are playing better than anybody in the league in hardpoint.
Yep.
But you
Believable.
know what's crazy?
Mm.
In S&D, they're the worst duo in the league. When it comes to KD, first blood percentage, yada, yada, they are 12th. When it comes to control, they are 10th. So I feel like that's a lot of what comes with bringing in somebody new to your roster. That hard point, everybody knows how to play hard point. You know where you got to rotate. You know what side of the hill you got to be on. Hard point is hard point. But when it comes to control, where you have to have some set strategies, and of course, in search, you know when to rotate, when to
Right.
flip to another bomb site, when to fake a rotation to another bomb site and go back. Like that stuff that you build over time, and they just don't have it in those other two game modes yet. They will. They're just not there yet. And because of that, because of the fact that Chicago's been playing together the entire year, I just feel like they're a little bit more consistent at this point in time. It would not shock me if it goes to a map 5 just because of how well New York is playing in hardpoint. So I'll say Optic gets a win in map 5. I'll say 3-2, but I could easily see them losing both of the hard points.
Mm. Yeah, that's possible. That's actually, interestingly enough, with this Optic team at this point, because of all the young guns that have been brought into the league and these like high-powered SMGs, rather than kind of the strategic SMG that like Seth is, who definitely can get his pieces in 1v4s and 3s and is a great player. But there's just a little bit more speed that those guys play with. And yeah, I think 3-2 that's a pretty good call for them for that
We
match.
move over to Friday. We got Atlanta versus Seattle. I cannot wait for this. I want to see all these new rosters so bad. And Atlanta hasn't really looked like the same Atlanta that we saw a month ago. Not that, they're terrible or they're going to be like the worst team in the league or they're not going to make it to winner's bracket or whatever, but they just don't look the same. Was that a 3-1 Atlanta? I saw you holding up there.
Yeah, Atlanta looks human. You're right. They are human now. They can be beat, but they are still, without a doubt, the best team in this league. They are
Without a
very
doubt.
difficult.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah, Toronto, but when they face off, we'll see what's up. Like I think they need to face off in the major again. They made it. So good point, right? So there's only one team in the league that I would have to wonder if they were going to beat them. And yeah, they're going to lose sometimes. But if I'm like, is Atlanta? They're still 14-3 or whatever. They've only lost 3 matches all year long. Like these guys are ridiculous. And when they're playing and they're on their game, they're very hard to beat. Yes, everybody else is caught up, but they still have raw skill to add to the table. It's still like, yeah, you can play like we play and rotate like we rotate, and you can put us on different maps, but we're still Arcity, Celium, Simp, and Abizi. So good luck, And by the way, we have Coach Crowder. Like this, this team is still this team, and
And
so,
Tupac now.
dude, come on, like what? This isn't even fair. So Surge, I'm sorry. I want you to have that honeymoon W, but you're playing against the Atlanta phase. This is not like when the ROKKR faced off against Optic in Dallas and they had, Standy. This is Atlanta phase. This is a team that is not happy watching Toronto prove that they're the best in the league right now. And they're on the other side, and Toronto's probably going to go undefeated and be 5-0 going in and skip a whole round going into the major and be waiting there for whoever wants to face off against them. FaZe is a different story. FaZe is 3-1. Chicago could be 3-1. Or they're 2-1. Sorry.
2-1, yeah.
They could finish behind the Thieves. And for the first time, not start with that bye like they've had every single major. And so that's going to be different for them. They're going to play in the first round. They could go to the losers bracket. Like that could happen. They're not losing this match. 3-1.
They are 2-1 this stage, but one of their victories was a 3-2 win over London. Another one of their victories was a 3-2 win over LA Thieves, which they've been looking better. So that one's not quite as – I don't see that one as negative as the London one.
FaZe is human.
And then the match before that, they lost 3-2 to New York in a round 11, which if they clutch up in the round 11, then they're 3-0. And who knows if we have the same takes, but they're not the same squad that we were looking at earlier in the year. And I'm excited to see what Seattle can do here. I think Decimate's going to bring the fire. But I mean, listen, I'm not going that far, but I'm excited for them. I've been waiting for Seattle to make a move because I think they're so close. And they're right on the heels of so many of these top squads that they've been playing. They just needed that little extra boost to get there.
Right.
I don't think they get there in this one, but I do think that they'll have a victory this weekend later on, potentially. But this one, I'm going to say this might even be a 3-0. I'm going to go 3-0 Atlanta here. I don't think that they'll have it figured out by this matchup, but I think that it's probably coming for Seattle. And that takes us to the last matchup on Friday, Dallas versus Florida. Man, this one has huge implications, too. If Dallas wins this, they're basically in the winner's bracket. If Florida loses this, now they need some help because they're 1-2, Minnesota's 1-2, LAG's 1-2. So this is super important here. I'll go first here because you've been going first the whole time. Yeah. I think Dallas is going to get a victory, but I think it's going to be tough. I don't think that main AR and the flex for Dallas, I don't think they match up with Skies and Awakening. I really don't. However, Shotzzy has been a different Shotzzy the last couple matches, and that's what's giving me a little bit of an edge. If Shotzzy was still struggling, I'm not sure that I would pick Dallas here just because of how well the AR and flex for Florida have been playing. But Shotzzy seems to be turning it around, and very similar to last year, Dallas goes as far as he kind of takes them. Of course, Clay was there last year, too. There was a couple things that went into it. But for this one, I'm going to say 3-2. I think if it goes to that map 5, I think Dallas probably clutches up. But I do not think this will be an easy one. 3-2 Dallas. What you got?
Honestly, I'm going to say... I am going to say Dallas is going to win, but I'm going to say... I'm going to go... I know Dallas loves to 3-2, but I'm going to say 3-1 for this one. They might lose that ROKKR match. I think Dallas is going to go back to the winner's bracket, though. They're going to continue to be a consistent top team in the league, and I don't know if in the next stage, to be honest, we may get a different story. They may go to the loser's bracket for the first time, depending on how the draw works. Because I think in the next stage, a lot of these teams are going to have played together for a long time. And you think about if you put Dallas in a group with like let's say if Dallas was in the group that Chicago is in right now, they might go
Yep.
to losers bracket. Against the Thieves, New York, Atlanta FaZe, and the new Seattle Surge. Like they might be in a London that brought Atlanta FaZe to 3-2. Like that, they're going to be in trouble. So, in my opinion, they need to place well, but they're still they're the same storied franchise. They play consistent. They have a good coach. They have a good system, good routines.
Ooh,
If Havoc shows up, that could happen.
that's a solid point.
You guys are going to not be happy. I'm going to say 3-1 to Dallas. There's something up with Florida. They are the new Seattle Surge 2.0, even though the Seattle Surge are being themselves from last year also, which is unfortunate. But the Florida Mutineers have fallen into that same, like, we have one of the most talented players in the entire league, and we're still going to be in the bottom four. And that's got to be rough for Wake. That's got to be a rough take. I agree with like Methods and some of these other people that have said Jerry, like, slacked probably wasn't necessarily the right change there, because what's missing from that team is some organization and execution. It's not like they don't know how to play Call of Duty, but when you execute at a pro level, it's different, and other teams are out executing them. And I think Dallas is one of the best executing teams in our league, which is why they can get fellow and still play at least consistently like Dallas. They might lose, but they can still play consistently like Dallas, which is same rotations, everybody's in the right position. Krim is going to do his Krim thing. Every once in a while, he's going to just go off and carry them on a map. Like, it's the same Dallas. It's from last year, literally the same Dallas. I don't know what to think about Florida, so I'm going to say 3-1.
I like it. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes you get production from the SMG position, and Florida looks really good. Sometimes you don't, and they lose 3-1 to Paris. So just depends on who shows up. As we move into Saturday, speaking of Paris, Toronto versus Paris. Are you thinking about this one?
No, I'm not.
All right.
I feel bad.
I'll give a match. I'll give a match to Paris.
Oh, good for you. All right, all 3-0 then. You give it so we're switching up, because I gave a map to Seattle against FaZe. You give a map to Paris against Toronto. Honestly, like, dude, Toronto is frying right now. When they lose, it's obvious mistakes, and Bance is getting on them and doing his Clayster thing, and kind of getting loud and boisterous, and it's working. And they know now that they can beat anybody in this league. And that's how they go into every match. We can beat you if we play our game right. And that's dangerous when a team is this talented and doing as well as they're doing. I was listening to the flank, and Scraps was on there at the same time as Bance. And so they had to call this match. It was like, sorry, bro, we're going to upset someone, but you have no chance, Paris. Like, it was like... And so, honestly, could Paris pull an upset here and Toronto go 4-1, still get the bye, and still be the top team? Absolutely.
Poor Paris, man. That's their last game.
That's really
last game of this stage. Even if they win, they're going to the loser bracket. But I just don't see it happen. I'll give them a map. They looked pretty good. They looked decent against Florida. But Florida, we just talked about how sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. So I'll go 3-1 here. But I think even a player or two could have an off day from Toronto in this one, and they could still probably end up winning, just based off of how good Kleenex is playing. Insight is like the best main AR in the league out of nowhere. So, sometimes something just comes along and it doesn't make sense, and you're like, all right, well, this is Call of Duty, and that's what I feel like we get with Toronto. Next match, an absolute banger again. I don't think it's as consequential for LA Thieves, because I think that they're probably already in winner's bracket. But if you're New York,
not if they lose to New York, that's dangerous. They now put themselves in a position where New York could go 4-1 and be in that and beat them in the tiebreaker. Because if New York beats Optic right before they play LA.
But if New York goes 4-1, then Optic's going to be 3-2, and LA Thieves would be 3-2. They'd have a tiebreaker because they just beat them.
But New York would still be top of the group.
Yeah, right? But LA Thieves would still be in the winner's bracket.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, you're right. They're going to the winner's bracket. I just think I want the number one spot. Like, If I'm the LA Thieves at this point, I'm like, I want that number one spot. I want that bye. I want to be waiting for whoever to play. The winners bracket is always, I mean, we've seen every single stage. It's ridiculous. Like the teams that end up in the winners bracket are the top teams in the league. And it's like right now, if you cut this off and you put Toronto, Dallas, Minnesota, and then the Thieves, Optic, and FaZe in the winners bracket, like those are dangerous teams. Like, good luck.
This league is so much fun to watch, man.
It's
Everybody's
awesome.
so good.
Oh,
Who you
we're supposed
taking?
Crap. Jeez. LA Thieves really played well last week, man, and this is gonna be their first game with Huke, huh?
Yep.
And their last game of the stage. Huke is gonna fry. Him and Hydra are gonna go head to head. Oh, okay. Good point. Thanks for putting that in the chat. That's a good point, actually. FaZe could still be top if they win both their matches, which is likely. But they got to go through
I don't
Optic,
know.
so at least they'll have some competition because I think Optic has to win against FaZe because they might take an L to New York. But dang man, I'm gonna go Thieves 3-1. I'm crazy.
Yeah, I don't think that's too crazy. This is tough just because when it comes to New York, their SMGs are playing so good. I know we already talked about it. Their SMGs are playing so good in hardpoint. And when you mix that in with Clay and how well he's been playing throughout the entirety of the year, I just don't see how New York gets 3-0'd or 3-1 just because of how well they're playing in hardpoint. You got to think that they're probably going to take map 1 and 4, but you will have a honeymoon period here. And who
Huke.
else would you rather bring in than Huke? I mean, it's not like you just made a roster change. You brought in
he won his last game, right? He won and then was benched. Like this guy is ready to just fry some people. Like,
yeah, you know what? All right, I'm gonna go 3-1. I think New York wins. I think New York might win that first hard point, but I just don't think that they have it in S&D and control for reasons that we talked about above. But yeah. I'll go 3-1 here, LA Thieves 2. Which takes us to the last match, the marquee match. Man, I wish they could have switched that. The marquee match on Saturday.
Match? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Florida
it should have been
LAG.
LAPs. Yeah, switch those around. But either way, I mean, it could have some consequences here. If you're both of these teams, I mean, you're both 1 and 2. If somehow LAG and Florida both win, then they'll both be sitting at 2 and 2. I mean, there is a case that there could be. You know,
if LAG beats the ROKKR, this is going to be an important game.
Yeah, absolutely. But if they both lose, which we both predicted, then it is what it is. We'll see what happens. I'll go first here. Florida versus LAG. This one again is tough because if you try to take the pulse of Florida, their SMGs are not playing well, but their Flex and AR are out of this world. I mean, they're top tier, no doubt. And if you look at LAG, they're just playing super consistent. And since Chino has come on board, they've looked much better. They've gotten some really impressive performances. Even though they didn't get the victory against Dallas, they looked good in that matchup. So this one's tough because are Florida's SMGs going to show up, or will Skies and Awakening just completely take over this game very similarly to how they did in the Minnesota game? That's the thing. If Florida plays the way they did against Minnesota, like it's going to take another really good performance from whoever they're playing to beat them. They do have that potential. I'm going to go LAG here. I like the way that this team is trending. I think they've been playing much better as of late since Chino come on. I think that he's brought a lot to that squad in terms of vibes and they just seem like they're trending in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is a scary one when it comes to seeding. I'll go 3-2 LAG. I think they clutch up in that last S&D. But if Florida wins this, I will not be surprised whatsoever. Who you got?
Oh, this is hard. You know, I feel like if Neptune, you know, people say like he's still learning the game a little bit. Like, I think with him and like hardcore fundamentals, this is a dangerous team. Like, 100%. Like, Sky's Awakening, Neptune, because his raw gun skill is utterly ridiculous. And now they have Havoc. Like, you know, that's a good squad. Like, this is technically, if you look at like Like, let's just be honest. You look at the Toronto Ultra roster, and you're not naming anyone who you're looking at all these other storied superstar players throughout the league, but they've become superstars in their own right. Like, just playing well together as a unit. Like, they're a scary team. Look what LA Thieves has done when they got rid of like the superstar slasher, and now they've gotten rid of TJ and they've changed things around. And it's like, Kenny's the only one still on the team, but they're playing well. They're having fun, and it looks great. Major Maniac off of the Røkkr, who was one of the GOATs last year, was on this freaking phenomenal, crazy, awesome team, and now is not playing in the league, is doing great in Challengers. Big ups to Major Maniac, because he's doing great in Challengers. But some of these teams, like, it's really about the unit, and man, I feel like Florida's right there, so it's so hard to pick against them. Where in opposite to that, you have the Gorillas, who have a team of 3 guys that kind of played well in the past, and then like Cheen is doing great. Like, and I love Cheen so much, I want to pick the Gorillas just because I want Cheen to get a W. Like, I'm like, go Gorillas. So I'm picking 2 teams that have potential to beat each other on any given Sunday. They could 3-0 each other technically, easy. One of these 2 teams could easily 3-0 the other one. But who's it going to be?
Those results would surprise me.
No, not even remotely. So it's like, okay, who am I picking? So I'm going to go with Florida in the same as you did, 3-2. I'm just going to pick the opposite.
Interesting. I was reading this point in the chat where Kiana says this is going to sound odd, but I got a feeling LAG 3-0, 3-1. Definitely out of these please don't drop me series. Yeah, I mean, App hasn't been playing his best Call of Duty as of late. He was the only player in that matchup against Dallas that didn't go positive. So, I mean, it's tough.
Is App getting dropped though? Like, is that gonna happen?
I don't see.
Or are they riding that out?
I don't see where they go. I mean, do they take a chance and bring in Mental? I mean, he's there. I mean, who knows what could happen?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think they may be one of the rosters that is kind of sticking with their guns, even though they did bring in Cheen, but he was on their bench. It's not like they went out and got somebody, and I think that they trust the pedigree and the championship pedigree of Apathy, who can have a bad year and then show up at champs.
Yeah, I feel it.
They just got to get him there.
Let's get there first. Where are they right now in the standings? They're in the mix right there.
They're in 8th, man.
Yeah, they're in 8th, but they're 20 points away from being in 10th. So
yeah, that's a good point.
They
got to beat Paris. They got to beat Florida. They got to beat Florida.
Yeah, they're not feeling comfortable. That's for sure.
No.
Finally, we make our way over to Sunday. I am really excited for all 3 of these matches. I cannot wait for these. I'll let you go first in this one. We have Seattle bringing in Decimate. We got London with their roster changes and how much better they've been looking in really close matches against teams like Atlanta. I can't wait. I'm super stoked for this matchup. I think it could go either way, but who you taking? Who you got?
Well, the London Royal Roster Mania Ravens, who have made so many changes this year, even from the start, like the very start. They had Parasite come in, then he left, and he came back, and like they've done so much to that roster, but it looks good. Their roster looks really good. Better. Yes. Well, that's why I'm saying it looks. Yeah. Right. Relative to what it was. Like at the beginning of the season, I was like, this team is going to be dead last all season long. And it wasn't anything against the players. It just wasn't there. They didn't have the pedigree needed to get W's against the other teams in the league. I think this is where Seattle gets to actually show their potential. I think FaZe is not the best matchup for that. I think they're going to win. I think Desi will have a good game. I think they'll all play well together. They're good. That's a good roster. Like the Seattle roster is pretty good. They should do really good. 3-1 Seattle.
I like that. Yeah, I'm really. I could see Seattle making a move here. If it's not making a roster move, but making a run here. I don't think that it's probably going to happen in this major. I think maybe once groups are selected for stage 4, they do need it. They don't look great in terms of standings, but also you can look at like the Group B standings right here and think like, all right, well they're 0-3, but you look at who they've played. I mean that group is tough. LA Thieves, Optic, Atlanta, New York, like there are no gimmies in there whatsoever. So I don't know. In this, I'm excited to watch them. I think that they're going to be better. I hope that when it comes to stage 4, I hope that they're in like if you put them in Group A here, I think that they could compete against Paris and LAG and Florida. Like I think those are teams that they can beat. I'm not so sure about the LA Thieves and the Optics and the Atlantas of the world. So I don't know. I still think that they get a victory here. I think London's been playing better. I'll go 3-2 here, Seattle. I think that London's getting better. I just don't think that they are there yet.
We're arguing two teams, and I know we're going to the next one, which is crazy. We're arguing two teams that have 4 total wins and 3 total wins. Like that's the difficulty of this matchup. But I think that Seattle is poised and in position to make a bigger splash than London or Paris, in my opinion, and maybe even Florida, and maybe even LA Gorillas if they play right. Like they could be 8th. They could steal that 8th spot and be 8th in our league at the end of stage 5. So, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I'm excited for them. I've wanted them to make a move for quite a while, and they finally made it. And I think that this could change the direction of where they're heading this year. I don't know if it's too little, too late. They're pretty far behind, but we'll see.
Right.
Which brings us to the last 2 matches on Sunday, and these are bonkers. These matches, I'm going to let you start. I'll tell you what. You predict Atlanta versus Chicago first. I'll predict Dallas versus Minnesota.
Oh, good. So since you're going to pick Dallas versus, that's every time Dallas plays Minnesota, I will tell you that those 2 teams, in my opinion, match up better than most in the league. Like in terms of, even though they've both made changes, like when it comes to those 2 teams, I'm like, so well coached, so just they just play fundamental COD. Like how do you, and Standy's that standout, that
Atlanta versus Optic.
God, all right. Geez, this is hard too. Optic has to win this, in my opinion. I know they're going to want to. They need to prove something to themselves going into the major. They're going to put everything into that match. They're going to be over prepared if that's possible, but in a good way. We're going game 5. We're either going game 5 or it's a 3-0 phase, and they're just going to look stupid and smoke them and be like, stop doubting us. But I'm going to say 3-2. All right, Greenwall, I need you to pull through for me. I'm going to say 3-2 Optic.
It's interesting. This is one that it's like a couple others that we've called. I feel like you could probably flip a coin and be just as right as having an educated guess here. The only thing is, like we talked about earlier when we talked about Atlanta, is that they just don't seem as dominant as they were before.
Right.
Like you look at that matchup against London, like who would have ever guessed that they would lose a map 1 hardpoint apocalypse against London? That they would lose a map 3 control against London? Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're just kind of in the middle of the stage here and maybe taking a day off or 2, or they're just not as motivated as before. I don't know. I can't really even see that either because they're all such grinders. Like Arcides is the king of playing 8s and grinding. So I don't know. Maybe everybody else is just kind of catching up to him a little bit. But with that said, Optic doesn't look like they're on fire either. So I know that we're looking at like 2 of the top 4 squads here in the CDL, but they don't look as top 4-ish as they did just a few weeks ago. But when it comes to this one, I don't think that Optic is in their best form that we've seen them this year. I think that the last match that they had against LA Thieves was pretty telling. I don't think that they looked great. And you can say the same for Atlanta, but they always have a way of clutching up, whereas when Optic was in that scenario, they kind of just got, I don't know, they just didn't look the same.
Yeah.
So in this one, I do think Optic could maybe take a hard point if the maps are right, but I don't think that they're going to take both. I can't see them winning S&D.
They need to take a search, and they got to take the control.
They have to win a control.
Steal a hard point.
Yes, if right now I had to say what's Optic's best mode is, it's probably that swing control, which could give them, like if they can steal a map 1 or 2, now all of a sudden the series looks a little bit better for you. But I'm going to go Atlanta here. I'm going to go 3-1. I think maybe they lose the hard point. Just coming out of the gates slow, but
Yeah.
that's where I feel with them. So 3-1
Okay.
Atlanta, which brings us to the marquee matchup, Dallas versus Minnesota. This is great. I can't wait for this one. If you're Minnesota, this could be another one of those where if you win, you're in the winner's bracket. If you lose, you're in the loser's bracket. Very similar to what happened with stage 2, and they ended up clutching up and making that winner's bracket. Not only the winner's bracket, but they got number 1 seed. So I look at this one. I have a different feel when it comes to Dallas. They're just a team that ever since they made the roster move and just the way that they're playing, and the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope and a little bit of light when it comes to Dallas is the fact that Shotzi finally had a good match, because before that, I was pretty doom and gloom on Dallas, which is the opposite of what you were. But when I look at Minnesota, I think they make one play. They get one team wipe in the Garrison control against Toronto. They could potentially have beaten Toronto. It would have went to map 5, and when it goes to map 5 S&D, who knows what happens. When I think of Dallas, I have like this negative aura about them at the moment. The only thing that's given me some light is how they played against, or how Shotzi played in his last match. I look at Minnesota. I just think that they're on the way up. They're competing against what many would consider to be the best team in the CDL right now. They're a team wipe away from getting that victory. So I'm going to go Minnesota here. I think it'll go map 5. Actually, I'm so confident that I could see them winning 3-1 too. I'll go map 5. I'll have them winning the search to win 3-2, but it wouldn't shock me if they win 3-1 also. So 3-2 Minnesota.
Okay, so Dallas probably has the least 3-0s and 3-1s in their losses than in the entire league if we counted for the year. When they got 3-0'd by Toronto, it was a surprise because Dallas so rarely loses every map in a series. That's why they have, what is their stupid record? It's ridiculous. 49-40. Yeah, it's bananas. I think Toronto is the only other team that's played as many maps as them, and they've played 90. Toronto's played 95 maps, and Dallas has played 89. And so you're looking at a team that, they lost to technically right now, it's weird to say, Dallas lost to the team, the only team I probably would have picked them to lose to for sure in this group, which was Toronto. Outside of them, they got their 2 little W's, and they're going up against a ROKKR team that, even if they lose to them, I still see Dallas going to the winner's bracket. ROKKR is not in a position where they can lose anymore, in my opinion, and go to the winner's bracket because they're going to give somebody else a leg up. Dallas is the one team that they might be at, but if Minnesota goes all the way to 1-3, I think they're kind of screwed out of the winner's bracket. Because they lost to Florida, so that'll be interesting. This group is going to be weird how it turns out. It's the opposite of the other group where you got all these 2-1s. In this group, you got all these 1-2s. But Dallas put themselves in a good position right here, and I'm gonna definitely say it's gonna go Game 5. It's Dallas and the ROKKR. What else do we want to see on a Sunday after watching FaZe and Optic, which was a banger of a series the last time we saw it. And I would love to see this go to a Game 5, probably round 10 or 11. Knowing these two teams, they're too methodical to sweep the other team. It just doesn't. Both teams are so disciplined, and depending on the map, if it's on Express, I'm going to pick Dallas. If it's on Raid, I might pick the ROKKR. Like, it's really like, what map are they going to be playing in map 5? That's how close these two teams play, in my opinion, because of their methodical nature. Last year, that's what I picked out about the ROKKR that I liked, is that they in my opinion, resembled like that kind of San Antonio Spurs, and now they got Standy, who's like what, Kawhi Leonard or something, like they just have that consistent play style, well coached, and you know what you're going to get, and you know what you're going to be up against, and you have to beat them. You don't usually just get handed victories against these teams, and they're playing each other. And I know I've been talking in circles. It's because I don't know what to pick. So I'm going to say Gosh, we've had a lot of off picks. One of us is going to have a lot of points at the end of this week, and the other one is not. Because I am going to go. Gosh, the ROKKR should win this. The ROKKR really should win this. Like, in my opinion, they should. But there's been times when I've been like, the ROKKR should win this, and then they don't win it, like against Florida, And so this is hard for me to pick because if they make a couple of mistakes, Dallas will capitalize on it. They always do. They've done it before to this exact same team, and it was unfortunate. All right, Minnesota. 3-2.
Oh, you went for it.
I'm going to go for it. I know I usually go for Dallas in these 3-2s, in these unpredictable wins, but I'm going to go for Minnesota, and I really hope they show up. Accuracy's got ice, Crim's got ice. Like, these two teams match up really well. I'm looking forward to it. Fellow may be it's stupid to say. I don't know what the chat thinks. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I don't know what you think, IKON. Dallas Empire lost one of the best players in our league right now, one of the best FPS players in the history of FPS, who will win many more championships. Probably at least one or two more, COD champs in his career. And I don't think they've changed too much. It's weird. I don't understand how I can say that. I know I said it earlier in the show, but I'm still looking at Dallas like, yeah, they can still beat the ROKKR. And they have Fellow instead of Huke. Like, that's how methodical and predictable this team is. And until they show us, you always say it, until they show us that they're not Dallas, I'm going to still call them Dallas, but I'm going to give it 3-2 to the ROKKR.
Well, they've showed us a little bit as of late that they're not the same Dallas, but
a little bit,
they are still performing. But yeah, I cannot wait for those Sunday matches: Atlanta versus Optic, Dallas versus Minnesota. Really, the slate across the board. There are matchups everywhere with the Seattle storylines with their roster move, LA Thieves with their roster move, and you look at the seedings overall. There are just right now like both groups are so tight that maybe you could say, okay, Toronto's going to be in the winner's bracket. Other than that, I mean, it's basically wide open. So that's what we have to look forward to this weekend. Those of you that stuck around with us for the last couple hours, thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of The Rotation with Kingdom and myself. Coming up this weekend, we will have 2 co-streams. So 2 Central Time on Thursday, that very first matchup that we predicted, Minnesota versus LAG. And then Sunday, that marquee match, Sunday night of the Dallas home series. That'll be 5 o'clock Central Time, Dallas versus Minnesota. So make sure you guys come in, hang out with us in the chat. We break it down in between maps, and it's just a good time, nice and vibes and stuff like that. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for another episode of The Rotation here. We will see you guys in the co-streams and again back here next Tuesday night.